Growing up, I lived very close to a little corner bakery. I have a lot of memories of going into that store before school and getting breakfast and lunch for the day. Because of that, one of my favorite smells in the whole world is a fresh baked loaf of bread. Hi, I'm Peter Dunn. At the end of this demonstration, you will be able to replicate that smell in the comfort of your own home. Using just 4 simple ingredients, I will teach you how to make a fresh artisanal loaf of bread in only 3 easy steps. To begin with, I will show you some of the materials you will need in addition to the 4 main ingredients. The first is a sturdy mixing bowl. The second is a sturdy spoon. We have a baking tray and parchment paper, a damp cloth, a kitchen scale, and most importantly, an oven. Now for the ingredients themselves, they are very basic. You likely already have them in your pantry. They are salt, water, flour. Now when making bread, I highly recommend you use something called bread flour. The difference between bread flour and something like all-purpose flour is the amount of protein found within the flour itself. This has a higher protein content, which allows for a stronger dough, allowing it to rise more in the oven. And finally, you're going to need something called a leavening agent. A leavening agent is simply something that releases gas in the dough when it's cooking, puffing it up. For this recipe, we will be using yeast. Another important note about yeast is it is a living creature. It can and does die off. So I highly recommend before using this, you check whether or not your yeast is alive. To do that is very simple. You can put in a little bowl with some lukewarm water and maybe a pinch of sugar, and after about 5 or 10 minutes, you can tell. There will be some change if it is alive. If not, discard it, try again, your bread will not rise. Ask me how I know. Now this recipe has been developed over 5 years of home baking, a whole lot of trial and error, and a lot of mistakes. But with this method, you will be able to achieve a good result every single time. That brings us into step 1. Step 1 of this process is simply making the dough. Now, when making bread or baking in general, it is generally advisable to use weight measurements as opposed to something like volumetric measurements. The reason for this is twofold. One is replicability. With weights, you could hit the same number every single time regardless of the situation. If you use something like this, there's actually a lot of variation that could arise, whether or not it's packed more deeply or the size of the grains. There's a lot of variation, so your products could vary. And the second most important is something called scalability. That is being able to change the amount you are making while still keeping the product the same. Something that relates to this, especially in bread making, is something called hydration level. Hydration level is one of the main properties you could change while making bread in order to change the end result. It is calculated by taking the water weight divided by the weight of flour. This recipe, as you can see here in grams, is 250 grams of water and 450 grams of flour. If you do the math, you get a hydration level of 55%. Now, whether or not you change the weights, whether you want to double the recipe or scale it back, by doing it in weights and having that percentage, you could hit that same percentage every single time regardless of the amount you actually make. So, without further ado, let's go into step 1 of this process, making the dough. This is very simple as you could get. Turn on your scale, tear it out so it's 0 with the bowl on it, and then you're simply going to add these weights of ingredients into the bowl. We will start with flour. We are aiming for 450 grams. 450 grams. 450 grams. Almost there. Too much. Too much. Again, this goes into the reliability part of this. When doing it by weight, you can hit the same target every single time. Perfect. Okay. Next, we will add salt. Bread making, a good rule of thumb is to use 2% to 3% of the weight of flour in salt. You can see that calculated again there. You just take the weight of salt divided by the weight of flour, and general rule of thumb, you want within 2 to 3%. So in our case, that is 12 grams of salt. 12 grams of salt. There we go. Alright, we'll tear it out again. Now ahead of time, I did check to make sure my yeast was alive. It is, so we will simply add that, and the water weight in checking if it's alive will count towards the total weight of the recipe. That was actually almost enough by itself. So a little bit more. This water shouldn't be cold, it should be around lukewarm temperature. Alright, there we go. Step 1, make the dough. All the ingredients are in this bowl, and then we're going to simply take a spoon and mix them together. Mix them together. This is what it looks like for me. Just want to get everything incorporated. Scrape down the sides with your spoon. Now, in the beginning stages of this dough will look like a mess. It will not look like anything you could bake with, but trust the process. After it's reasonably well mixed, you could go in there, damp your hand. Nice wet hand keeps the dough from sticking. And just go in there with your hands, work it up. Makes it a little better. Nothing too crazy here. You're just mixing, forming something called a shaggy dough. And just making there's no pockets of extra water, no pockets of dry flour, no pockets of extra salty areas. Just a nice homogeneous mixture. Alright. This is what my dough looks like. And believe it or not, that is the end of step 1. Step 2, the main thing you need to worry about step 2, which is strengthening and proofing, is that it takes time. The time it takes varies by a lot of factors, mostly environmental. Temperature is perhaps the biggest. But for right now, end of step 1, you're just going to take your damp cloth, cover the bowl, leave it on your counter for half an hour. All right, 30 minutes is up and we're already looking like a different dough. It is grown slightly in size, which is good, and all the flour is slowly absorbing the water, getting hydrated. Now in this step, step 2, proofing, which is it rising, is also strengthening. And we're going to do that with just some simple folds. Grab an edge, stretch it out, bring it back towards the middle. And you're going to go around about 20 degrees every turn. Every turn, about 20 degrees. Going on about 6 or 7 folds. And then you're going to take the ball, flip it upside down so the seam side is down. And you're just going to kind of roll it in the bowl. This is going to tighten everything up. And already you can tell it's a lot stronger. Before it was weak, it would not rise in the oven. It would simply melt in a puddle. All right, put it back in the bowl, damp cloth back on it. We're going to do that whole step one more time in another half hour. All right, another 30 minutes has passed and we're going to repeat the exact same procedure. Take one of the edges out and into the middle. Stretch into the middle, stretch, into the middle. Going to do this again 6 or 7 times till you get all the way around the dough. Take the dough, flip it upside down, seam side down. You're going to roll it in the bowl, tucking the end in, getting the top nice and tight. Believe it or not, that is the end of strengthening this dough. We're still in step 2. Got to finish its proofing. And again, this is very dependent on environmental factors, temperature being a big one. But what you're looking for is it doubling in size from where it is now. I would check in about an hour. That could be a good place. If you want to get it going a little bit faster, you need to put it in a warmer spot. In the oven with the light on is a great place. But I will see you when this has doubled in size, and we will move on to step 3. All right, another 60 minutes have passed, and I just pulled this out of my little warm oven. You can see it is about doubled in size. It is nice and buoyant, but it's still retained its shape, more or less, because of the strengthening we did. So after that, the end of the bulk fermentation, that ends step 2 of this process. Now, on to the third and final step, shaping and baking. We're going to turn this out onto a nice, clean, and well-floured surface. Okay, we're going to deflate a little bit and get it into a nice, desirable shape. Here, I'm going simple, nice, rustic, nothing more than a rectangle. Okay? If you see any large bubbles, it's a good idea to pop them now. Otherwise, those will come void spaces in the oven and won't make for a good final bread. All right? Simple rectangle. Going to use another tool. This is called a bench scraper. Simply cut it in half. All right. Now onto our prepared baking sheet lined with parchment paper. One loaf left. One loaf right. Again, this is a very basic rustic bread, and this will make something akin to ciabatta. And shaping is done. We're going to let this rest one more time, covered so it doesn't dry out, for another hour. Until it raises in about 50 to 60% in size. After that, it's into the oven. We're going to have bread. All right, here we go. Another hour has passed, and look at this. This bread has just about doubled in size, way more than necessary. So what we're going to do from here is place it into a well preheated oven at 280 degrees Fahrenheit. Bread cooks very hot, okay? Something about this size should take about 20 minutes, but a good rule of thumb is to take the internal temperature of bread. It should measure past 215 degrees. All right, here we are, fresh out the oven. Bread better than anything you could buy in a store. We got a nice crust on here. And remember, only 3 easy steps: making the dough, strengthening and proofing, shaping the dough, and finally baking. Beautiful crust, still piping hot. You can listen to the crackle. Tear it open, nice crumb structure. If you followed along and follow these steps, thank you very much. And real quick, I want you to just, because as promised, your house now smells like that corner bakery I went to as a kid. Thank you very much for following along. Happy baking in the future.